Hi everyone, I am Santosh Kumar DK, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Canara Engineering College. In this video, we are going to discuss Big Data Analytics 17 CS 82, a core subject from the 8th semester. The study material regarding this course is available on my site, which is highlighted over here. In the previous videos, we have discussed Module 1. In this video, we will start discussing Module 2, where in Module 1 we had seen Hadoop. Hadoop has two main things. One is HDFS and then other one is a MapReduce. In HDFS, we have discussed its components, data node, name node, and related content. In MapReduce, we have seen the framework and the programming part, and some of the demonstration also discussed in the previous module videos. Now in module 2, we'll discuss some essential Hadoop tools, some add-ons to Hadoop tools, and the Hadoop Yarn application, which is from the Hadoop 2.0 onwards, which is purely meant for as a tiny operating system of the Hadoop, or else it is called as a scheduler. We'll see how it's going to work in this module. And we'll see how to manage Hadoop with using a Ambari and some administration procedures. Let's begin with the essential tools. In this video, I'll discuss 6 essential tools according to the syllabus. The first one is the Pig, and next Hive, and next we are going to use Scoop, and next we are going to use Flume. Next we'll discuss OZ. Next we'll discuss HBase. One thing I want to note over here is here the introduction, brief introduction and the brief description of all these tools has been discussed in this video. It is not in detail discussion of any of these, because if we are going to discuss in detail, again that itself is a separate course. But it's in the syllabus they have given only the brief introduction and the brief description. Only such things will be discussed over here. Let's begin with the Apache. Apache Pig. What is this and why we need this? So Apache Pig is a high-level language that enables the programmer to write a complex MapReduce transformation using this simple scripting language. So pure technical terms, right? Yeah. Now we'll simplify it. We know that scripting languages, right? Scripting languages like JavaScript, PHP, at least these you are familiar with from your previous semesters. Like most of you have done 5th semester mini project and 7th semester mini project, where you have used one among these, and even in 7th semester you have web subject. There also you have used scripts, PHP and Java. So similarly that we are going to use a Pig over here, which is a scripting language. We'll see what exactly, why we need this scripting language here. Here we can see most of the people are from the non-programmer background who find difficult to understand our Java codes. I had told you already, Java is purely developed, Hadoop is purely developed using the Java. So people from the non-programming background are finding difficulty to understand. You know, scripting languages are easier than programming languages, and they face a issue in incorporating with the map, sort, reduce fundamentals of the MapReduce, which we have already discussed in the module 1. When we are creating a program in the Hadoop for MapReduce, map, sort, reduce, these are all the key phases we have to use. And eventually it will become a difficult task for the non-programmer to maintain and optimize the code also. Like when they're new to it, and even for the programmer, like when they start writing a huge code, it is difficult to maintain and optimize that respective code, and the processing time of that will also increase. So for that, what they have done is Yahoo started with a scripting language. Why? Because they face this issue. You know that I have already told the history of Hadoop, where Yahoo is the one which initiated this Hadoop after Nutshell. So Yahoo faced this issue, and what they have done is they thought of coming with the one more scripting language. That was an SCT. There was a necessity to develop a easier way to analyze these large data set without using a time consumption complex Java codes. You have seen the Java code, even the simple MapReduce program, the demonstration what I have done, it has many complex terms. For that, at least you should have a sound knowledge in basic Java. And for that, what they have done is Apache Pig has been developed by Yahoo researchers. It was developed with a vision to analyze and produce large data sets without using a complex Java codes. Pig was developed especially for non-programmers. As I said, it is purely for non-programmers. Pig uses simple steps to analyze data sets, which was time efficient. So this is all about the introduction of the Pig. So what Pig has done, it's going to simplify the job of non-programmer. So what exactly this is? I told Pig is a scripting platform, runs on the Hadoop clusters. We have already JavaScripts, we have already PHP scripts. We are already having n number of scripting languages. It is not only Java and PHP. We have n number of scripting languages in the market. But what is the beauty of Pig is going to run on the Hadoop clusters. Even I defined Hadoop cluster, how to configure and what is the role of it in the first module, and other steps are also shared in the website. And it is going to allow the design process and analyze the large data set. So repeatedly I'm using the term large data set because we are working on a big data. So it uses a scripting queries like SQL. We are already used learned SQL. So such type of queries will be used, not exactly the same. Such type of queries will be used to analyze the data, where you might have seen in your RDBMS something called aggregate, join, and sort functions. So these things are going to perform using the two components in the Pig. This language, the Pig, the language which it uses to write a scripting language is called as a Pig Latin. The Pig Latin is a procedural data flow language used by the Pig to analyze the data. It is easy to program using this Pig Latin as it is similar to SQL. You have seen in SQL, whenever we are writing a search query, select star from a table where we'll be putting the constraint what we want exactly from the table. It's simple compared to our normal programming languages. That is what is the thing Pig is going to provide with the Pig Latin, and it is having a runtime engine. The runtime engine is responsible for running the Pig Latin codes, and Pig often used for ETL process. The ETL process is the one which is famous in the business intelligence. So we have a lot of data already in the globe. We have a huge quantity of data which I have again given with a proof in the previous module. So that from that data we are going to extract the data, and the data what we extract is not always in the format of analyze, is not ready for analyzing, is not ready for processing. So what we have to do, we have to transform, we have to clean it, we have to transform. Like for example, if the data is in CSV format, we may need to convert it to TXT format, or if it is in TXT format, we may have to convert it to CSV format or .dat format. Formats might be changed, or else the content inside that might be changed. Some data are only relevant to us, some values inside that data is not relevant to our study, then we have to clean it. Some are missing, again we have to handle the missing data. So those are all called the transformation. And finally, once after transformation, we will load that to our respective algorithm which can process it. That is what is ETL processes. The ETL is the standard term which we highly use in business intelligence, which we'll study more about ETL from third module onwards. So here I'll just take a term ETL. We'll discuss more about ETL in the third module. As I said, Pig is a high-level language that enables the programmer to write a complex MapReduce transformation using the simple scripting language. Using that is what the scripting language is, Pig Latin, which uses set of transformations on the data set such as aggregate, join, and sort. And it also supports data pipelines, quick research on the raw data, and iterative data pre-processing. Pig uses Pig works on a multiple. Now we will see Apache Pig usage modes. There are 3 usage modes Apache Pig is going to support. The first one is local mode, second one is non-local mode, which is nothing but a cluster, and the third one is interactive or batch modes. Where you can see local mode means we are working on a local machine. So all the processing will be done on the local machine. The non-local mode is nothing but it's going to work on a cluster. So where we are going to make use of the Hadoop's programming paradigm, MapReduce, and Thais. The Thais about MapReduce we have already studied in module 1. I'll just give a brief introduction of Thais. It's also similar to MapReduce. It's also execution engine like a MapReduce. But the difference, why we need Thais over here, even though we have a MapReduce, is it is faster than MapReduce. Thais, the name is from the Hindi word Thais, which is nothing but fast, and it is a contribution from the Indian community to Hadoop framework, where it's going to perform the task multiple jobs faster than the MapReduce. And the Thais term we'll be discussing, we'll be visiting again and again throughout this discussion. Next is the interactive and batch modes. The interactive and batch modes, the interactive means what? It's going to allow us to interact whenever we are writing a code and whenever we are running a code. And batch mode is nothing but we are going to gather the complete set of queries and we'll be putting into the batch processing. These modes executes the job on the cluster using either MapReduce engine or on the optimized Thais engine. There are also interactive and batch modes available. They enable the Pig application to be developed locally in the interactive mode using small amount of data and then run at a scale on a cluster in a production mode. Here we will see some differences where some modes which is supported by the Pig. As I said, interactive mode and batch mode are the main on the row and on the column. All the available local mode, Thais local mode, MapReduce mode, and Thais mode. On the local mode, whether the interaction is supported, yes, it is supported. And what is interaction? We are writing a script line by line over here. I said Pig is a scripting tool and Pig Latin is a scripting language. Here what I am going to write is I'm going to write a line by line scripting and I'm allowed to interact. It's just like writing a C program to perform certain task and it provides an interaction. And the next one is we are having the batch mode. Batch mode means what? You might have heard about shell scripts. So what we are going to do in that shell scripts, we are going to combine multiple commands in a one shell script file, and once I run that particular script file, it is going to run all the commands in sequence. Similarly, I told about start-all.sh, which is also shell script, when I'm configuring the when I'm explaining about the configuration of the Hadoop. So that time I told it's going to run multiple commands to start the daemons of Hadoop, right? Similarly, here also we can perform the batch processing where all the scripts are going to be coded in a single pig Latin file, which is having an extension of .pig, and these files are directly executed on the HDFS database. On the HDFS database, it's going to run so that we can get a respective desired answers. Next, on the Tej local mode, interactive and batch modes are on the experimental phase when this textbook has been written. I don't maybe that experiment might have been completed by this time. And on the map reduce mode, so in the non-local mode we can get a map reduce mode and the chase mode. And the map reduce mode, interaction is supported, batch mode is also supported, and on the chase mode also interaction is supported and batch mode is also supported. Next we have something called Hive. What is this Hive and what is the use of this? We'll see. The Hive is developed by the famous company Facebook, and Netflix, Amazon, all these people are the clients of this Hive. Apache Hive is a data warehouse infrastructure built on top of Hadoop for providing a data summarization, ad hoc queries, and the analysis of the large data sets using the SQL-like language called HiveQL. So what we are going to do here is we are going to write a SQL-like queries. What is the meaning of SQL-like queries? I have taken a simple example just before that. Select star from table where some condition, right? So that is the easiest thing. See, if I compare your normal C program and C++, Java with SQL, writing those 3 lines of SQL code is easy. Query is easy. So, and when we are having a huge data, I told you what is big data is. It's a collection of semi-structured, structured, and unstructured data. We have something called structured, right? On that, HDFS even allows us to store the structured data. So on that, if we are going to write any queries where we can make use of the HiveQL, so which is nothing but a query language. It offers the features. Before those features, we'll see something. Hive is considered the de facto standard for the interactive SQL queries or the petabyte of data using Hadoop, and offers the following features. It's going to provide us interactive SQL queries over the HDFS. That is HDFS, we know that it is having petabytes of data. Next, we'll see the features. It provides the tools to enable the ETL process. ETL already I have explained what is ETL is. It's going to collect the data, extract the data from the huge data warehouse. And again, what is data warehouse? If you have not studied in the 6th semester, so you'll be learning in the 3rd module. We'll discuss in detail about data warehouse and the myths and truths of that, and data mining and all the terms. Just I'll take a term extraction where over here, and I'm connecting it to a data warehouse. I'm extracting the huge data out of the data warehouse or data lakes or data cloud, and that data, as I said, we are going to transform it to the respective format, and we may clean it. We may perform some actions on that data so that it can be fed properly to our processing system, analytics system, and finally we will load that to the respective system so that it can perform. For that, it's going to provide a mechanism, so those tools will be enabled, and it's going to provide a mechanism to impose structure on the variety of data formats. If I take SQL, you know how to export and import the data from SQL. So where you'll be having a extension of .SQL when you are importing and exporting data from MySQL or PHP MyAdmin. Similarly, you are having a Microsoft Access, you are having a Microsoft SQL, you are having a Oracle, DB2. There are many database servers like this. And whenever you are extracting a data from each are having a different formats. Along with that, the Hive is going to provide .txt, .rdf. RDF is a format which is used in high-level graphs, high-level graphical graph analysis. So all such different varieties of data formats are supported because we can import and export the data over here to the Hadoop HDFS file system. And it provides access to the files stored either directly in HDFS or in other data storage systems such as HBase. HBase is the one which we are going to discuss at the end of this discussion. So HBase is going to provide a mechanism where we can store the data in the similar way how we are going to store in the regular traditional RDBMS system. So Hive is having a mechanism where it directly allows us to interact with the HDFS or from the HBase. It provides a mechanism to execute the query execution. Yes, we need a again execution engine, runtime engine, where either we can go with a MapReduce or we can go with the Taze. The Hive is used for users who are familiar with the SQL. The capability of the SQL query on the data of the Hadoop clusters are going to be supported. And why we need Hive over here? The main intention of Hive over here is attracting the people who are familiar with, who are happy with the SQL, who are telling that I'm happy with SQL, I don't want to get into other tools. Yes, you have to get into this because you are dealing with your day by day data is increased and you have to work on the data. You cannot say I'll be working with a small data. Production system is not as we think. So that's why we need a mechanism where rather than asking them to learn new tools and new technology, we'll give a mechanism which is similar to the SQL which they are familiar and will attract them to the Hadoop environment. But when it comes to MapReduce, I was telling about MapReduce just before. We have seen Pig. Now we are seeing the Hive. What are like? Let me compare so that it will be clear for you. In MapReduce, what we did, we have written a complete normal code in a Java, or else we may write in a Python also. So it means it's a compiled language. It's going to have a compiled language. But when it comes to Pig, it's having a scripting language, which is Pig Latin. And here we are having a SQL-like queries, exactly like SQL queries are similar to that can be written over here. But what wrong with the MapReduce? We have to write a complex codes to extract the data. You have seen like writing a code to fetch the data from the file and to store the data into the file is complex compared to retrieving the data from the database and storing it. But when it compares to Pig and Hive, that complexity will be reduced because these are purely meant for the non-programmers. And coming to the MapReduce, it can process structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. That means big data. And Pig can also do that, but Hive can do work only with the structured data because it's a query language. So it can only work with the structured data. To use MapReduce, user should have a knowledge of lower level abstraction. It means they should know in and out of the system. But with respect to Pig and Hive, they need not to know that they will be working in the high level of abstraction. Next, we'll see Scoop. So the Apache Scoop, which will be used to acquire, it's going to be used to acquire the relational data, which is from the RDBMS. So we are already having before the term of big data, we already work with the RDBMS where we had a huge data. It's also having a huge data compared to this structured and semi-structured. The quantity we can say it will be hardly some 10 to 20% of the total data which is available in the world. But the 10 to 20% is not so less, it is also huge, because all our transactions, banking systems, database management system is having all this data. Even student database, if you take up any databases in the world, is having in a RDBMS format. So from that we need a mechanism to load data from the heterogeneous. And just now before I took a term of different vendors of the RDBMS system. I took Oracle, I took Microsoft, I took MySQL. Like that, there are many, even IBM DB2 I took. Like this, we are having many vendors for the RDBMS. So from all these, we have to take, because now we are talking about a big data, we should support everything in the world. For that, what we need a mechanism to fetch the data and store it to the RDBMS. But when we are doing this, we are going to face some challenges. First one is maintaining the data consistency. Hope you remember when you are studying a DBMS, you studied something about normalization forms. 1NF, 2NF, BCNF and all, 3NF, those things. I don't want you guys to be mastered in that, but why those things are used? When you are combining multiple tables, there might be a duplication, there might be a loss, there might be some connections which are missing. Such type of things you have to handle. So for that, what you are going to do, you are going to use those normalization forms within a single type of RDBMS system. Such issues are there, but now we are bringing the data from the varieties of RDBMS systems in the world. So we need a mechanism. We have a challenges, right? The challenges is, first one is the consistency in the data, whether the data is consistent and all. This is the first challenge. Second one is ensuring the efficient utilization of the resources. Yes, I have huge resources. We spoke about a data node and name node in the module 1, which I said they will be having in terms of the processing, and the RAM will be somewhere 256 GB, and hard disk will be, it's having an array of hard disk. It might be having connected to a rack of hard disk. But now, whether are we going to make use of, and we all this will be connected with the network, and it's having a processing unit, GPUs and all, whether are we going to make use of, utilize these resources efficiently? That is the main thing. I have resources, we should make use of them efficiently. It is not that simply in certain tasks we should not waste our time. And how to load this bulky data to the Hadoop, and which is not quite practical, and we have to do it practical. We have to make it as practical, because we have to process it, and we cannot go with writing some scripts so that it can load the data from RDBMS to HDFS. That is not so simple, because scripts, when you write a script to load the data from one mechanism to another mechanism, it is going to take it takes a time, because scripts can work faster in the same environment. When you are moving from one environment to another environment, that takes a time. That's why what they have Apache, what they have done is they came up with the scoop. So what is this scoop is? To address all these challenges, whatever I have discussed, Apache came up with a solution, Scoop. Scoop is nothing but, it's a combination of SQL and Hadoop. SQ stands for SQL plus OOP goes with a Hadoop. That is what is Scoop is. So Scoop provides a mechanism for importing and exporting data from RDBMS. You know, in RDBMS we have a mechanism to do this, right? We can import or we can export the data from RDBMS. I'll take a simple example of one RDBMS, which I will be connecting your Gmail contacts, G contacts. So Gmail contacts, you know that, where you can import a contact from other world, like you might be having a CSV file, or you might be having a VCF file with you as a backup contacts, which you can import it to your G contacts. And you want to save for your future, you want to back up the contacts, or you want to put that content into some other service provider. where you want to export. That is also possible. Similarly, for importing and exporting the data, we are going to get a service from the Sqoop, and it is having two versions. The versions are having some features. The first version is having it's going to support connection with the RDBMS, and it's going to support security, where Kerberos security is integrated with it, and data transfer between RDBMS to Hive or to HBase is supported by version 1, and data transfer from Hive or to HBase or to RDBMS is not supported directly in the Sqoop version 1. And coming to the version 2, it's not going to support the connectors directly, but we can make use of the other tools, like we'll be discussing in the next. Like when we are making use of the normal database in our MySQL, I'll take an example of MySQL, where when you want to connect with the front end to back end, we had a habit of using the JDBC connectors, right? Generic JDBC connector or ODBC connector we have used. So with that, what we did, we have established the interface between the front end and the back end, and we made the front end to communicate with the back end and extract the data, whatever we are going to ask. But this is not supported in the Sqoop version 2. But in version 1, they are going to support. Then how they are going to give the facility over here? For that, they have other tool which is integrated with it, which we will be studying in the next. Next, Kerberos security integration. If you have studied more about cryptography, where you might have heard about Kerberos security integration. It's a framework which provides a security where it is having levels of securities. So each level is developed using multiple algorithms. You know that some of the best algorithms in the world for security is RSA, AES, DES. These are all the some algorithms. I am just naming it, just example names. And by making use of some best algorithms, what they have done is they have created each levels. Each level is integrated with the multiple security algorithms, and such a framework is designed. That is what is Kerberos security integration. That is supported in version 1, and in version 2 it's not supported. Why? Because here in version 1 they were giving a direct communication between the HDFS to RDBMS communication, but in version 2 they are not doing this. They are not going to give access to direct communication. That has to be done via Hive or using the HBase. Before that is not the case. Directly you can communicate, but now it is not the case. That's why even JDBC connectors are also removed in the version 2. And data transfer from RDBMS to Hive or HBase was supported, but here it is not supported. What we have to do here, first import, then load it, and in the reverse case, first export, then load it back to the RDBMS. So Sqoop comes with some features as we have discussed here. One is the parallel import export. Yes, it's going to support import results of the SQL queries. It is going to support. It's going to support the connectors for all the major data RDBMS databases. If it is a version 1, it's going to support with the JDBC and ODBC connectors. If it is a version 2, it's going to force us to go with the import and export mode. And for security, it's going to provide Kerberos security in version 1, but in version 2, it's not directly supporting us to connect to the Hive or HBase. We have to go with a manual import and export. That's why they felt security is not required over here. It provides a fully incremental load on the incremental means what? Data is keep on increasing. So that is also provided by the Sqoop. Now we will see how this Sqoop is going to acquire the data from the RDBMS. So this is the RDBMS, and first we are going to import the data. Next we are going to export the data. As we are aware, the Sqoop is the one tool which is designed to transfer the data between the Hadoop and the RDBMS, and RDBMS and the Hadoop, vice versa. Both are possible. The scoop can be used to import and export the data, HDFS, and vice versa. It is going to make use of the JDBC connectors or Microsoft SQL server connectors, or it can use PostgreSQL, or it can use MySQL, or it can use Oracle. It supports all RDBMS. And when we are importing, there are two stages we are going to perform over here. In the first stage, what we are going to do here is, first we are going to gather the metadata. What is metadata is? The metadata is nothing but a description of the data. What data I am having, that description is given in the metadata. So because I should know what data I'm going to retrieve from the RDBMS, right? I should know what all the content it is having, like the clear description I should know, so that I can accommodate on my HDFS. For that, I should know the detailed description, which is nothing but a metadata. Next, once after gathering the necessary metadata from the data imported, the second step is going to map only. It means what? It's going to map the data to the respective HDFS storages. We are having multiple HDFS storages. You remember when I spoke about in the first module, I spoke about a cluster. In cluster, minimum 4 nodes should be there, and the replication factor, everything we have discussed, right? So that is mapping now. So this job does the actual data transfer using the metadata and capture data. Now, in this scoop, once after the data is gathered, it's going to divide the data into splits, and those data will go and sit in the map. It's going to complete data will not be sit in one HDFS. It will be replicated. As I told, if there is something wrong, backup and recovery should be handled. For that, it's going to do this task. Next, we'll see how to export. Even in export, we are having two stages. So the two stages are, again, first you have to gather the metadata. Then what we are going to do, we are going to perform the submit task. So we'll see now. Again, here also we have two steps. First, examine the database, for which database I am sending, whether it's a MySQL database, whether it's a Oracle database, whether it's a Postgres database, or it might be a MongoDB. So we should know for which database I am exporting, because each database has different formats which is going to accept while importing, right? So first we should know the database information. We'll gather the metadata of that. Then the export stage again uses the map only Hadoop job to write the data to the database, because we are having multiple data on multiple data nodes. So what we are going to do, we will gather from that and we are going to store it in the RDBMS. Next, we'll see Apache Flume. Apache Flume is purely used for data streams. Which is the best example for data streams? Social media, right? If you take social media, in that you can take a best example is Twitter. In the Twitter, the streaming of data is high compared to other social media. Even we can take Facebook, Instagram, all the social medias are going to contribute huge data to the big data, but high amount of data is generated by Twitter. And it is not only from the social media, it is from the servers. Servers are going to generate a huge log files, like each and every millisecond, what all happening with the server is entered. Even what I am doing with my system, everything is recorded in the log. So based on that only, it will get to know when it goes wrong, what's wrong, in which point of time things went wrong. Even you are aware, when a plane is moving from one place to another place, it's also generating a huge log file. That's why people, if something goes wrong with a plane, they will search for that data, which they call it as a black box. If they get that, because it's having a huge log files, where what it will do is they can analyze, yeah, from this point plane started misbehaving, due to what reason. They will check out with the reasons also, and that is what is log files is. So there are plenty of servers planted throughout the world, and those are going to also generate the log files, and we have to see the log files. And it is not only from that, we are generating huge mails, that is also contributing to the data stream, or any continuous data sources. It might be a news, dynamic web pages, I can call it as a dynamic web pages, where even if you take up any score like CricBuzz or ESPN Sports, or if you take up any news reporting websites, every websites, these dynamic websites are keep on updated. So from such websites, how I capture the data and how I will store it in the HDFS. For that, the tool is provided, which we call it as a Flume. The Flume is a one which is going to support this extraction of the data from the data stream and store it to the HDFS, where it is having some internal nodes. We'll see about it. Before, again, we'll see more about this Flume. It's an independent agent designed to collect, transport, and store the data in the HDFS. Often data transport involves number of Flume agents. It is not only one. This is the one Flume agent which I have highlighted over here. Multiple also we will see in the next slide. It is not only one agent should be there on given communication transmission. It can be multiple also. But this is the simple architecture. First I'll discuss simple, then I'll go to the complex architecture. Flume used for reading the data from the log files and all. And now what happens when we are reading the data from the log files? So we need a Flume agent. Flume agent contains three things: source, sink, and channel. The source component receives the data from the source receives the data from the web servers. Web servers can be anything which I have mentioned over here. It might be log files, it might be social media generators, or it might be email messages, or anything which are generating a stream data. From that, source is going to capture the data and it will be putting it onto the channel. Next, what is channel is then? Channel is the data queue that forwards the data from the source to sink. And it can be thought of as a buffer also. Yes, we know channel when we are discussing about Unix system programming. There also we have used FIFO as a channel when we are providing inter-process communication. So channel is nothing but a buffer. See, when I am telling I am capturing the data from web servers and storing, giving it to channel, it should be a memory where I am writing it to the memory and somebody else from read from that. So it's a buffer. And why we are not allowing directly a communication between source and sink? Why we need an intermediate buffer? Because the data generation rate of the source might be high compared to the data retrieval rate of the sink. If you are going to if the reading speed of the sink is less compared to the writing speed of the source, then there is a lot chances of losing the data, which we call it as a congestion, right? So that's why rather we don't have to lose the data, because it's a data stream. Like we have to capture every data so that we can analyze each and every incident what has happened. For that, rather than directly connecting source and sink, they came up with the concept of giving a buffer in between. That they call it as a channel. And what about sink? Sink is a delivery data destination where it directly connect to the HDFS, or it may be any local file system, or it may connect to another Flume agent when they are going to be a multiple Flume agents. Flume agent, if you call a Flume agent, they should have all these three components. A Flume agent can have multiple sources, multiple channels, and multiple sinks. Source can write to multiple channels, but sink can take data from only one channel. Source can write to the multiple channels. It might be connected to the multiple sinks also, but sink can read from only one channel. Data returned to a channel remains in the channel until the sink removes it. See, this is what, see, when the data in the buffer should be removed. So of course, once the data is read and sink is going to remove it. It's just like when I press a key on my keyboard, it will be stored on the buffer. When the buffer data will be erased, once the next data will be sent. But here what the case is, here not channel will not be erased once the new data has come. It will be erased by the sink because it's going to tell I read it. So how it's going to tell I read it? It's going to delete the data. By default, the data in the channel are kept in a memory, but maybe it's optional to store it on the disk to prevent the data loss in the event of network failure. Scoop agent can also be pipelined. We'll see that. Yes, Scoop agents can also be pipelined. Here what we have done is we have taken 4 agents, and the connection between the individual agent is handled by the Apache Avro. You can see over here Avro source, Avro sync, Avro source, Avro sync. This is the one more tool they did not discuss in detail in this, just they have given a term Apache Avro. So which provides a integration, interfacing between the Flume agents. The configuration of this is done between multiple web servers and the Hadoop HDFS. Why? Because I told you it might be a now Twitter web server, it might be a Facebook web server, it might be a some websites web server. From all these, I am capturing the data and I want to store it to the HDFS. What I did, I capture the data parallelly, yes, and later what I did, I should put through a single thing, and I told source can be connected to multiple sources in the just before discussion, and now I am consolidating over here and I am putting to the final destination. And here we are making use of Avro. Avro is a one tool from the Apache which provides data serialization and deserialization system, and it also provides data exchange between JavaScript notation, which we call it as a JSON. The exchange format will be in the format of JSON, which is a famous right now. Might be people are aware about JSON. Like it also provides remote procedure calls. That is the one famous thing in Java, RPC, remote procedure call, which is allowing us to communicate between multiple systems on a remote node. Next we'll see Apache OZ. What is the job of this and why we are going to use this? The Apache OZ is the one which is going to provide us to design a connection between the multiple Hadoop jobs, where it will make use of DAG, direct acyclic graph, through which it's going to connect the multiple Hadoop jobs, where some jobs can be parallel, some jobs can be sequential. It acts as a connector over here. So why we need this? So it's going to provide a job scheduling system. OZ is going to provide a job scheduling system, and it provides the integration to the Hadoop framework. And with this, we can run the multiple Hadoop jobs parallelly. That is the main intention of coming with the Apache OZ. OZ is a workflow director system designed to run and manage the multiple related Hadoop jobs. For example, one job can be from Apache Pig, one might be from Hive, one might be from the Spark, Apache Spark, which is the famous one used in industries right now, and Scala. Like this, there are many jobs from different Hadoop components. So those, if you are going to want to integrate, so that can be possible with the help of Hadoop, Apache, OZ. Now, for instance, complete data input and data analysis may require several discrete Hadoop jobs to be run on a workflow in which the output of one job should be served as a input to the another job. When we are performing a huge task, this is going to happen. We'll take a task, and that task input can be a output of the another task. So that is possible. When we are doing that scheduling, we need a OZ. OZ is designed to construct and manage the workflow, and it's not a substitute for the Yarn scheduler. I told about Yarn. I took the term Yarn in the first module. Yarn is nothing but yet another resource negotiator, which we are going to discuss in the next video. So Yarn is going to perform the task of resource scheduling. But here what we are going to do is we are going to make use of OZ just to coordinate between the multiple Hadoop related jobs. It's not going to it's not going to override the task of Yarn. Yarn is the one which going to take care of everything in the Hadoop with respect to resources. Yarn, as I said, Yarn is going to manage all the resources. That is not done by the OZ. But OZ has, each OZ job has three things. Those will be categorized into three things. One is a workflow, one more is a coordinator, and another one is a bundle. What is a workflow? Workflow is going to be a specific sequence of jobs. Workflow contains a specified sequence of Hadoop jobs with outcome-based decision pointing and control dependency. When it's a workflow, yeah, there is workflow. The name itself tells there is some control dependency. The flow is nothing but what? It's a control. That dependency is there in the workflow. That is the one type of job. The second one is a coordinator, where a scheduled workflow job is that can run at the various time of interval or when the data become available. It's just like I can call it a coordinator as a for relating, I'm taking this term, a trigger. You might be heard about trigger in your SQL. So when some data came, so that time that trigger is initialized and some certain task will be happened. Similar to that, coordinator is going to perform the task. So it's going to run the workflow on basis of some data availability or on basis of some event available. When some event has been happened, I'm going to do this. Or else some on some time intervals. For example, every 1 hour this task has to be done. This workflow has to be executed. That is taken care by the coordinator. And the bundle. Bundle is nothing but a batch. It's a high-level OZ abstraction that will batch all the set of coordinator jobs. So it's going to you can notice coordinator is going to run the workflow, and bundle is nothing but what? It's a batch processing which is going to run the multiple coordinator jobs. So next we'll see a simple DAG, directed acyclic graph, for one word count example which we have discussed in the previous module. So where you can see I'm going to start, it's just like some flow diagram. I'm going to start the program. So how to start the program? When you are going to run a program, it will become a process. You know the definition of that. And after that, how the process will be created actually, it's going to be created using the fork. You might be heard about fork API. That fork is a system API which is going to create a process. Once that is started, now the word count task is forked. Word count program is forked, and now it has become a process and it started the job. Once that job is running, MapReduce is going to run word count and it's keep on counting the words, and it's going to read from the plenty of sources, and it's going to write it to the output. If it is successfully done, then of course we are going to end it. No, we know that how to end. The status of that process is set to 0, and the task is completed successfully, and all the resources will be released. These are all the tasks which happens. What if it's going to hang somewhere? like it's not coming out. We know that, like whenever the system is hang, or whenever some commands are not working, when our program is not working properly, when some applications are not working properly, what we do, we will kill it. So how to kill? Either we'll go with Control Alt Delete in our Windows machine, or else Alt F4. Some of if nothing is responding, then restart the machine by holding the power button, right? That is what is killing when there is some error. But here we need not to kill by turning off the machine. That should not be done. But if there is a error, how it's going to handle? It's going to kill by calling the kill process. So this is the one simple workflow which is written for the given MapReduce count task. A complicated one where we are having each workflow contains 4 type of nodes. One is a control flow, another one is an action node, the another one is a fork or join. I just initiated this, just I spoke about fork in the previous slide, and the next one is a control flow nodes. So when we are going to start a new process, yes, of course it is going to be forked. You can notice over here it's going to be forked, right? Once after that, it's going to be split. See, I said in the previous discussion that it can be a MapReduce streaming task, can be a pig task, it can be a Hive task, it can be a Spark Scala task, right? It can be of any. So here you can notice I'm doing this task parallelly. And once I'm doing this task parallelly, next what I'm going to do, the output of that should be an input to the output of all these modules which I'm doing parallelly should be an input to a one module. So that's why what I'm going to do, I have to combine. For combining, what I'm doing, join. I am making use of the join. After that, based on that data, I'm going to take some decision. This is some example. I'm going to make some decision. If that decision is true, it might be true or it might be false. Here they have not mentioned. If the decision is true, consider it is true, it will directly go to the Java where it's going to store it to the file system. Again, there might be some computation. Or else, if the decision is wrong, something should be translated, or something to be modified, it will go to MapReduce pipes. Then it's going to give it to the Java runtime engine. Then here also some processing is going to happen. Then finally it will go to the file system. File system is nothing but a HDFS over here. Then finally the process is ended successfully. Where here this DAG is used to explain how the parallel programming can be achieved by making use of the OZ. How you can make the multiple type of Hadoop jobs can be run. Here they have taken only 2 jobs. You can add multiple over here, and how those will be joined, how the decision will be taken, and how they are going to the output of one particular task will be given as an input to the another job and to the another job, and finally store it in the system. Let me define what are all these. Now, the control flow nodes defines the beginning and the end of the workflow. They include start, end, and the optional fail nodes. The start, end are the control flow nodes over here. Action nodes are where actual processing tasks are defined. Action nodes can also include HDFS commands. So where exactly the tasks are defined? Here the tasks are defined, and here the tasks are defined. So these are all the action nodes. And fork and join. As I said, fork is to create a process, join is to combine the process. So join will be used when there is a fork initiates the parallel programming, and join will be combining the results. And control flow nodes enables the decision to be made about the previous task. As I said, this is decision making. Again, some terms are very familiar to our flow charts, which we have studied in the first year. So the diamond symbol will be used to make a decision. Here also the decision will be taken by the control flow nodes. Here they have not given exact example for what this DAG is written. Just they have given a diagram. So with some assumption I have explained this. Next, the last component what they have highlighted over is Apache HBase. The Apache HBase is a open source distributed versionized non-relational database modeled after the Google's Bigtable. Google has come up with their own kind of RDBMS structure, which they call it as a Bigtable. So similar to that. So they came up with Apache has come up with their own tool, which they call it as a HBase, which is a distributed versionized non-relational database. Like Bigtable, HBase leverages the distributed data storage provided by the underlying distributed file system spread across the commodity servers. So the commodity, what is commodity term called for, I have explained in the first module. So commodity is nothing but what? Where it's not going to demand you guys to bring the components from the same vendor. It should not be a supercomputer and all those things. You can come up with a assembled system. It can be any machine where it should have a minimum configuration where you can install the Hadoop. That is the beauty of Hadoop, right? Hadoop works on the commodity hardware. So here what it is going to do, that distributed data storage is supported with HBase on the commodity servers. There are some features which is supported by the HBase. We'll see. It's going to give us linear and modular scalability. So of course, scalability is very important when it comes to big data. Why? Because data is not constant here. Data is increasing. So scalability is very important. That should be supported. And it's going to provide a strict, consistent read and write operations. So when data is updating, read cannot be a consistent one, right? So it's going to, that's why it's going to tell the strict, consistent read and write. So data is updating. If you are reading the data, when it is updating the same data, then you may get a wrong data. There might be a small time interval. I'm not telling wait for hour. It may tell wait for a second, or it may tell wait for a millisecond, let it complete. So such type of consistent strict read and write operations are given by the HBase. And it's going to support atomic and configurable shading of the tables. So it's going to support the configurable shading tables. Next, if there is a failure, the atomic failover support system is also provided by region servers. It's going to have a region servers. By that, it's going to provide the atomic failover. Next, it's going to provide a convenient base classes for backing up Hadoop MapReduce jobs with the Apache HBase tables. So I told it's going to be somewhere similar to our normal RDBMS. So it's going to store the HBase tables by backing up, by you making use of the convenient base classes. Why to back up? Again, if there is a failover, atomic failover, how it's going to take care? By backing up the data. Directly it cannot assure that you store the data, I will take care without backing up. It has to back up. So that's why the backing up classes are being given. And easy to use Java APIs for the client access. The complete systems from the Hadoop scratch, they are built on the top of, they are built using the Java. So it's going to support multiple Java APIs for the client access. And we'll see how the HBase data model will be. It like data model means nothing but what? How it will be having a table kind of things. A table in HBase is similar to other databases, as like rows and columns will be there. A column in HBase are grouped into column families, all with the same prefix. For example, if I'm going to have a price where if I go with a stock market example, where will be a when the day starts, there will be open price, there will be a close price, there will be a low price, there will be a high price. So all these are the prices which are open, close, low and high, which are prefixed with the price. That is how the column family will be described over here. And specific HBase cell values are identified by a row key or column family and column name, or by the version. So how to remember the version? What is that this version is? You might be aware about there is something called timestamp. That timestamp is going to define what is the version is. So that timestamp is used in the each row. It is possible to have many versions of the data within the HBase cell. Yes, of course. So on the timestamp, the value of the stock, for example, 9 o'clock, I'll take 9:30 stock market will start. If it is a 9:30, on at 9:30, the price of the one stock of some XYZ company is some 1,000 rupees. After 9:31, on the next timestamp, it might be 900 rupees. On 9:32, it might be 1,100 rupees. Like this, every minute it may change, or every hour it may change. That versioning is possible, and as for the same data, multiple versions can be possible. That will be stored on the HBase data model. And this complete tools are explained from the Douglas headline. As I said, I did not go in detail of any of the model like tools, because all are there as a just a brief introduction and little bit of description. So according to your syllabus, hope you understood. Thank you.